Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the 32nd meeting of the Joint Select Committee on Human Rights, Equality, and Diversity. And this public hearing is being broadcast on Parliament Channel 2, Parliament Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. I want to welcome the officials from 7 entities: National Center for Persons with Disabilities, Living Waters Community, the Salvation Army, Service Volunteered for All, Serve All, Adult Literacy Tutors Association, Single Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago, Single Mothers Association of Trinidad and Tobago. I am Glenda Jennings-Smith, and I am the Vice Chairman of this committee. I want to, at this point, invite members of this committee to introduce themselves, starting.
Good morning, Esmond Ford, Member Committee.
Good morning, Sean Sobers, Member of the Committee.
And I'll take the opportunity to ask each official here present with us this morning to introduce yourselves.
Good morning, Rosemary Scott, Living Water Community.
Paula Lucy Smith, ALTA.
Good morning, Jolly Kalayan from the Salvation Army.
Good morning, Suzanne Gopal, Serve All.
Good morning, Shermaine Wickham Howell, Single Mothers Association of Trinidad and Tobago.
Good morning, Hulsi Bagan, Living Water Community.
Good morning, Maris Warner, ALTA.
Good morning, Giselle Ramos, National Center for Persons with Disabilities.
Good morning, Rachel Liddell, Serve All.
Good morning, Carolinda Cumberbatch, Salvation Army.
Good morning, Wendell Grant, Single Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago.
So thank you all and welcome. Extreme poverty was defined as the combination of income poverty, human development poverty, and social exclusion by the United Nations Human Rights Council. On a national landscape, according to the Social Sector Investment Program 2019, there is a need to reduce levels of poverty and deprivation amongst important vulnerable groups, such as women and children, older persons, persons with disabilities, and individuals and families in communities with socio-economic challenges. On Friday, December the 6th, 2019, the committee held its first public hearing on this inquiry topic with officials from the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, the Ministry of Labor and Small Enterprises Development, and the National Commission for Self-Help Limited. This inquiry unveiled several pertinent issues, including A, the current legislative reform initiatives of the Ministry of Labor and Small Enterprise Development to promote equal opportunities in employment and to address discrimination of vulnerable groups. The National Commission for Self-Help Limited's upgrades within the past year to address the efficiency of its monitoring system, and the current efforts of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services to restructure the standards means tests to capture persons who fall outside the scope of the eligibility requirements, as well as to seek the assistance of the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean to provide recommendations for improvement on the SMT. Today's public hearing shall constitute the second of this two-part inquiry into persons living in poverty and extreme poverty in Trinidad and Tobago, with special focus on vulnerable groups. It is anticipated that this inquiry shall enhance and promote the equalization of opportunities and improvement in the quality of life and the status of all persons who are victims of poverty. The inquiry objectives today are to identify the challenges of vulnerable groups living in poverty and extreme poverty in Trinidad and Tobago, and also to examine the effectiveness of policies, programs, and services available to mitigate against the impact of poverty and extreme poverty on vulnerable groups in Trinidad and Tobago. I want at this point in time to inform viewers and listeners that you can send in to the committee your questions related to today's topic via email, which is pal101@ttparliament.org, facebook.com, Twitter, ttparliament, Twitter @ttparliament. I will now invite brief opening remarks from the entities here present. And may I start with Ms. Shireen Bosch, Vice Chair of the National Center for Persons with Disabilities.
Thank you. Good morning again. National Center for Persons with Disabilities is a non-governmental organization based in San Fernando. We're at 7021 New Street, San Fernando. We provide full-time vocational and rehabilitative training to young persons with disabilities. We deal with varying disabilities, except mental. We have been in existence for 53 continuous years. And whilst we, provide training at a cost to the trainees and their families, we receive a government subvention. We also depend heavily on donors and goodwill of the public. We also, as I said, we do rehabilitative training for persons who have acquired disabilities like myself through accidents or, whatever it might be. And where we try to reintroduce persons like myself into a professional life that they can continue to have a meaningful life, earn and contribute to national development.
Yes, Ms. Rosemary Scott.
Good morning, Rosemary Scott from Living Water Community. This year our community celebrates its 45th year of existence. And we began 45 years ago because we felt that there was a need to reach out to the poor and the destitute on the streets of our nation. At present, we run 18 programs in social ministries, ranging from little children to young men who come off the streets to drug addicts, both male and female in our various institutions, to caring for the sick and the dying. We have a place for HIV/AIDS as well, a hospice for that. And so it's across the board. Most recently, I guess, in that is the care for the asylum seekers and the refugees that come to our shores. So our ministry is very varied, and it is because we see the need that is there, and we strive as best as we can with the constraints that are always before us to reach those needs of the most vulnerable that come to us. Thank you.
Hi. So ALTA is very specific in the kind of work that we do. Our name says what we do, adult literacy, and then we have a tutors association, that's our name. in that what we do is we offer free literacy instruction to anyone aged 16 and over at 50 venues across the country. These classes are taught by unpaid volunteers who we train, and we have developed a program for literacy instruction that is also used with teens, with persons from age 10 to 15. So our free classes, community-based, start at 16, and we have a program in partnership with NALIS for 10 to 15-year-olds that takes place in 10 library venues. And there we offer our program then to the younger age group. We are also working on an online rendering of this program that would bring the instruction that we offer so that it is not venue-based, but can be done from anywhere you have internet access. Our program really touches on poverty because most of our students are those from the low-income areas. But I would point out that we don't tend to get persons who are living in extreme poverty because their concerns are day-to-day food, shelter, and needs. And they really cannot afford even a free class because of the transport to get there or the time spent away from earning, the lack of childcare facilities, the whole range of. So we know that we have persons of a low income in our classes. That would be our main group of persons. But for extreme poverty, you would need to have a whole other set of support mechanisms in place in order to improve literacy of those in extreme poverty. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Once again, good morning, everyone. The Salvation Army has been in existence here in Trinidad and Tobago for 119 years. And the main focus has always been serving, suffering humanity in Christ's name, thus vulnerable persons. We have Major Carolyn Bosch, who is our Divisional Secretary for Social Services. I'm sure later on she will give you more detail as to what we do. But only to say that the Salvation Army main focus really is to help persons without any discrimination. And we not only provide the day-to-day assistance to individuals, but also we seek to equip young persons and adults for them to be self-sufficient via music and other skill training programs. Our main sponsors are local persons and also international organizations. From time to time, based on request, we receive assistance from them. We are very grateful for the support we have received from the local community and also the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and we look forward to serving this community for another 119 years. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members. I am from Serval. We are an NGO. Serval is an organization of weak, frail, ordinary, imperfect, yet hope-filled and committed people seeking to help weak, frail, ordinary, imperfect, hope-drained people become agents of attitudinal and social change in a journey which leads to total human development. It does so through respectful intervention in the lives of others and seeks to empower individuals and communities to develop as role models for the nation. Serval is a community-based indigenous voluntary organization which has been working throughout Trinidad and Tobago for the last 50+ years. We have also moved up to the Eastern Caribbean, some countries like the Bahamas. We have gone to South Africa, done work with some people there, and Ireland. Based on our philosophy of attentive listening, respectful intervention, and lack of cultural arrogance, Serval began its journey in 1970 with the Black Power Revolution, and we have moved on after all these years working with those communities. Our famous question is, how can we help? We have our focus, Father Panton's focus was 0 to 3 at the time. We have since moved on from 0 to 3, and now we have programs for 3 to 5, 12 to 15, 16 to 23, and then we have adult programs as well. The program helped people to emerge out of poverty, to build confidence and self-esteem, to empower them to sustain themselves in a society in which they are trapped and where they feel that there is no hope. And so Serval works with these communities, and a lot of times we work with the vulnerable communities to try and assist and to change attitudes and behaviors of the people so that they would find hope. Thank you.
Could the next member official please state your name and the organization from which you came?
Good morning, Madam Vice Chair. My name is Shermaine Wickham Howe, and I'm the founder and president of the Single Mothers Association of Trinidad and Tobago. We have been functioning for the past 8 years and officially registered April 17, 2017. We have 4 directors, myself, Shermaine Howe, Mr. Jackie Burgess, Simone Lewis, and Mr. Glenn Bagwan Singh. We have 12 executive members. We have officially registered over 200 members. The mission for SMAT is to provide care, support, and edification to all single mothers of Trinidad and Tobago. Our vision, a safe space of support for single mother homes, facilitating and empowering to help themselves to be able to maintain their household and children. We carried out work for the past 7 years. We have assisted in minor house repair for some mothers, helped mothers register small businesses, one-on-one sessions for personal development, rescued some mothers and children from abusive relationships, assisted in school supplies for school children under our association, rescued mothers and children who were evicted and left on the streets. We have a functioning WhatsApp group of almost 100 members where we interact on a daily basis, and we have our Facebook page where we interact worldwide. One of our most recent visions that we would like to have completed within the next 2 to 3 years is a living area to house mothers for up to 2 years maximum, where we will also like to have the different ministries on board: the Ministry of Education, Ministry of National Security, the Ministry of Housing. And this area we are looking at is where we can have the school, like for preschool children and nurseries, where we could house them so the mothers would be able to go out to work, or even where we could train the mothers to be able to help themselves within the 2-year period that we will have them there. And we also want to work with the unit, the gender-based unit, and that's why we would like to have the national security on board, all these ministries on board. This is something that just one entity cannot do. So we need to have all hands on board with this project going forward, and we are privileged and honored to be here today to have this session with you all, because we do have extreme poverty cases. Thank you.
Morning, Madam Vice Chair and members. I am Rondell Fields, President of the Single Fathers Association of Trinidad and Tobago. At our organization, firstly, before anything else, I must commend the Parliament, and I think it speaks a lot to our advocacy to see that men are actually being recognized now as a vulnerable group, that fathers are actually being recognized as a vulnerable group. And a number of issues would have been highlighted. Past JSCs would have highlighted a number of inconsistencies, inequalities in the system that didn't serve or didn't recognize fathers and their families more so, who have been in vulnerable conditions. We've highlighted a number of issues where there was inequity. We had the social development admit the inequity when it came to the Public Assistance Fund. We also have extended assistance. I think what people have failed to realize that when we don't see the vulnerability of men, and by extension fathers, we fail to see the vulnerability of their extended families, their children first, or sometimes when men have died, their widows that they leave behind after. So I definitely know that we'll go more into this as the day progresses, but I must salute the Parliament above anything else for recognizing men, and by extension fathers, as also a vulnerable group that is affected by poverty as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'll start off the questioning, and my first question goes to Living Waters community. At the December 6th, 2019 public hearing, the Ministry of Labor and Social Services indicated that the ministry is a champion of decent work and social inclusion. I want to quote from them, where they said, the ministry that is, we are a champion of decent work and social inclusion. And decent work looks beyond an opportunity to work, as it requires that work be safe, productive, and deliver a fair income and uphold the right of workers. Social inclusion aims to provide access to these opportunities to even the most vulnerable groups in our society, it says, and I'm quoting here. And they said it is our firm view that the very best route out of poverty is through decent work. And I want to ask you, what impact does the inability to secure decent work opportunities, and I'll say it again, what impact does the inability to secure decent work opportunities have on an individual's ability to escape poverty, in your view?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, for that question. Well, firstly, we see poverty as something that is multifaceted. So access to decent work is one component. When we look at poverty, we must also look at the root causes of poverty. And one of the things we have found is that apart from the fact that people may not be able to access decent work, within the family circle currently, there's a high level of mental illness. So even if somebody finds decent work, they may not be able to retain decent work. So when we are actually assisting vulnerable groups, it is important to do a thorough assessment from all angles, biopsychosocial, to be able to determine what are the needs of that family. So that if somebody, therefore, we are helping them towards finding decent work, we need to know that this person is of psychologically sound mind to be able to access and retain decent work. Because at times they may find work, but they cannot really sustain it because of other issues that they may have going on with them at that point in time.
Interesting that, there was a submission from the Office of the Chief Secretary, Tobago House of Assembly, and they noted that one of the challenges of vulnerable groups living in poverty and extreme poverty is little awareness and knowledge on where to access help and how to make informed decisions that will affect their lives positively. What are some of the measures that can be adopted by some of your key agencies to alleviate these concerns?
So in our recommendations, one of the areas we looked at is the accessing of the local government system. Because, for example, local government councillors and the municipalities are more conscious at the grassroots level of families and individuals within their catchment area who need help. So we believe that that system could be utilized more effectively to identify individuals who need help and for the local government system to link the help with the state agencies and NGOs. So that is one of the recommendations we have made to be able to create that awareness among those persons who feel alienated or who are not empowered enough to access the state agencies to seek help.
So I know you have an extensive array of agencies coming from the Living Waters and the other bodies, but what are you doing to market information? Because people out there on the street and who are experiencing poverty and extreme poverty, they don't read newspapers and stuff like that. What do you really do to bring that type of information to these groups of people?
I would say in particular, one of our ministries is what we refer to as our poor bank, where people are registered. We have roughly about 500 families that are registered there that we consider to be at that extreme poverty, maybe not into extreme poverty. And we have social workers that work along with them, making them aware of what the various services are that are offered that we know about. I'm not saying that it's an extensive list, but certainly in that ministry in particular, because that's where you get the single mothers, that's where you get persons who just cannot find work. A lot of those referrals actually come to us from some of the social services out there asking us to help. So it's kind of important to work with the various networks and putting them back out there to know that there are some services.
And I'd like to extend this question to the other officials before us this morning. What are you doing within your own organization to bring these critical informations to these groups of people who are highly vulnerable? What are you doing? Because let's forget the newspapers. What campaign do you have to reach out and touch to the extent where they would respond?
I think I would like to bring the issue of literacy. You've mentioned newspapers several times, and I think that's informative, that is the way that we previously perceived that information would be disseminated to people. And we recognize now that many people do not read the newspapers, but newspapers have moved online, people are getting information from social media, different sources. But even if you use those channels, that still limits you, because how many people can actually read and write to the level that is required to interact with those methods of communication? So that's why I think one of the root causes we must look at is the literacy rate in Trinidad and Tobago, which is not the official literacy rate that is quoted. Estimates are, from the 2 literacy surveys done in the 90s, that maybe 1 out of 2 persons cannot read the newspaper level reading, and 1 out of 4 would struggle with everyday reading. And this is going to make a huge impact on how any information is relayed to the population. And what I have noted over the years, having interacted with low-income people who have limited literacy, is a lot of the information that is put out is in written form, and in fairly complex written form. So I think one of the first things we need to think about is when we are targeting low-income groups, whether as an NGO sector or as a government sector, how are we actually sending this information? Are we sending it in print? And that embodies, whether it's a WhatsApp message or something on Facebook, it's still print. And it still means that those persons that are not literate are not accessing that information. So if you ask how ALTA tries to reach our population, we use radio a lot. And radio still is effective, but it's expensive. And the NGO sector does not have the means to really get our message out. So if you talk to any one of us, we are highly limited by our financial resources, that we can't get our messages out really like we would like because we don't have the financial means to do so. And we need to look at, okay, how do we get these messages out? For us, we use radio and we use people-to-people contact. You know, word of mouth still works very effectively. TV is still very effective, but there's no way ALTA can afford TV advertisements. We have TV partners, and we know when we get stuff on TV, and luckily we partner with Living Waters as well, and we get on Trinity TV. So we do have, I think those to me would be the most effective ways to get messages out. radio, TV, and you need to use voices and people that connect. And for us, the most effective way to reach those who need our services, which is those who need to improve their reading and writing, is to have persons who have benefited from our services talk about their experiences. So we have our students speak, and that's the most effective. But here we have the major challenge. There's a huge stigma attached to low literacy in Trinidad. So it takes an enormous amount of courage to face even a radio interview where nobody's seeing you. And I have students who've gone on radio and changed their name, so much so that sometimes when I call them by the false name as I'm in the interview with them, they forget that's the name they are assuming for the radio interview, right? So the stigma, I think, is what acts to really prevent us reaching and getting persons to come out to improve their literacy. And that's a huge area to be addressed, I think, at a national campaign level, is to how do we start to make persons who have low literacy feel that it's okay to actually go somewhere and be seen improving their literacy. So those are the huge challenges we face with literacy. But I think this underlying factor of low literacy is what is going to be preventing many of these messages reaching your target populations and our target populations.
Very well said, because, you know, it is said that there are programs, but our members of our community, do they know about these programs? And even if they know about these programs, are they aware of how they can access the program? Can they reach to the program, you know? So, and I will extend this question to the other members who wish to respond, because we always say there are programs through NGOs, governmental agencies, but how do the people who we are trying to target, are we satisfied that our programs are well subscribed?
I would say in our experience, just to add to what was said before, social media has been very, very powerful. I would say social media is free. That's the only opportunity we have. In our organization, we have no affiliation or partnerships with anyone that gives us exclusive TV or even radio interviews. What we have done also, we've, within ourselves and our own capacity, provided a podcast as well, where we set a lot of information there. What I realize is the most powerful, though, is having a video where you, in partnership, we often work a lot with the TTPS, Community Police Division. They often have a lot of people that come to them. We would have that come to us. Then there are other NGOs. So I must say in the Central Division where we are based, we have a strong multi-sector partnership. We've even, through the TTPS, partnered with ALTA as well. I don't know if the representative would be aware of that. So, because many members or many persons would come to us when they see these videos of us on the street talking about the services that are provided by social welfare services provided even by ALTA and other NGOs. And we get hundreds and hundreds of messages as in for asking for information, as into the ways they could access it, if we could connect them, if we could help them fill out forms, and a number of things like that. So I think I've seen social media be very powerful. One thing though, literacy is a very important point, but additional to literacy, language. Sometimes the language we use to speak to people who may not have the levels of education that we have, it's like we're talking an entirely different language to them. So I understand it's about having that message brought across in a grassroots way to a community or people who understands exactly what they said. Because you could say 1,000,000 words in a broadcast, 1,000,000 words in an interview, and all the words fly straight over the person's head because they don't understand, they don't even know there's a ministry of whatever and wherever. So I think language with those videos and language with those interviews is very, very crucial and important to get your message across.
Major Gambart from SalvationArmy. One of the things that SalvationArmy has utilized is that we have women's group, and we try to have seminars where we have people from different agencies coming to say, this is what is offered, this is how you can access it, and encourage our members. It wouldn't necessarily be the people who need the services that would be at these seminars, but to be able to identify people in their community who is in need of the service, and so they can pass it on person to person. One of the things that we are in the process of doing is to try to set up a database to say, If you come to us and this is what you need, this is where you can go, this is a number, this is who I can call or who I can send you to. Because people come and some of the things that they are in need of, we really can't provide it. We don't have the resources to provide it. But that's what we are looking at, is to find out, if our father come to us and this is his problem, who can I call? Whom can I send you to? To whom can I call for information so that I can be better able to help you? In the past, we used to use our community centers. And I think if we get back to having programs and so in our community centers where the people are at, it's a good way to reach them.
Hi, good morning. National Center for Persons with Disabilities. The way that we market ourselves really is through the referral system, through the Ministry of Education, Student Support Services, as well as by word of mouth. Due to a lack of funding, we are unable to really make our messages as accessible as we would like them to, because we deal with a mixed population of persons with disabilities, so both visible and invisible. So we have our physical, we have our deaf, we have our blind, we have ADHD, autism, and these are all groups that we would like to reach where they're at, and we hope to one day, through increased funding, to possibly make our messages as accessible as possible to all groups.
Okay, we'll move on, and I'll invite Member Ford to ask a question.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Again, morning to you all. Welcome again. Serval, right? You identified various challenges accessing the social services that would be provided by the Ministry of Social Development, right, as the case may be. We know that there's a wide array of different services that are offered, right, to those in need, those in poverty, those that are disabled, the pensioners and everything as the case may be. And I'm sure across the board, with every representative here, you all could probably identify one particular challenge, right? So in accessing these social services, what challenges you all experience? And I would like, as brief as possible, and zero in definitely to what are the concerns and the challenges that you all experience, because you all deal with people, as we say, it's poverty we're talking about. So you all will be trying to access these social services. Wide array, but are you all accessing them? Anyone can start, but I'd like to get a quick point from each one, because I think this is the important aspect of this whole thing. Because the government is providing the services, but are we being able to access it? What are the challenges?
At Serval, I think one of the challenges that we encounter when we work with these vulnerable groups and we work with the communities, because a lot of the community members, the people in the community, don't know where to access information, where to access assistance from. We have to remember too that these people in the communities, they are hope drained, going back to our vision and mission. And sometimes when they go to these social services, the types of attitude that they get from the customer service representatives.
Negative attitude.
Negative attitude.
Be specific.
It's like a turn-off for them. And therefore, they will tell you things like, I am not going there, no, because I'm not being treated well, I'm disrespected, nobody seems to know anything, you can't get information when you go, nobody knows. And so they don't go. So we try to encourage them and we hold their hand and go with them sometimes. So let's say, for example, the birth paper office. We go with them because they don't know how to access applying for birth paper for the children or even for themselves. So sometimes we have to go with them. But I think the main challenge is the type of attitude that they are getting when they go to the offices, the negative attitude.
Yeah, let's go.
So, good morning, member. We have situations where we have mothers with children in dire need. And when we go we are thankful to even have these grants in place for the small business grant and the food card and all this stuff. We are very grateful to even have it at our disposal. But when we go there and we actually do apply, the time frame is what I believe they could adjust. Make it a quicker process, especially when they know that these persons are in dire need. And the means test that they do now, they could be a little lenient, because if you're not making, you have to be making zero, almost nothing, to be able to qualify. So what about a mother that has 4 kids and makes a salary of $2,500? If she goes there, she wouldn't get it. She wouldn't be qualified because she's making over $2,000. So we need to adjust.
The means test.
Yes, the means test, the time frame in which they dispose these grants, and I think that will help a lot.
Yeah, single fathers.
Yes, morning again. I will echo the same sentiments of the time frame, also the customer service. As I said, it's horrible. A little testament to that, we'd have sent a mother of, we all know about the Orange Valley epidemic, where the fishermen were murdered. We'd have sent the mother to get assistance since the father had died, but because his body was not recovered, the customer service person told her that if they didn't find the body, how you know he dead. So she since then has not received any type of assistance. Additionally to that, whereas the mothers may still be lucky to go and apply, we still have the cultural bias in certain offices where they are still misinforming people that if you are a man and you are the head of the home, you cannot qualify for public assistance. So there is need, because it is nowhere in legislation, nowhere in policy that this is so. The minister came out and said that isn't so and it was going to change. In the last year, out of the about 15 applications that these fathers have put in there, we possibly got 1 since then. Since the last JSC we met and we raised it 2 years ago, it really hasn't changed. So as I said, I echo the same sentiments of the last 2 panelists and add that the cultural bias that exists. So in other words, if you're a child that lives with us in a single father-led home, it's most likely that you're not going to get public assistance unless you are a child living in a single mother-led home.
SalvationArmy.
One of the problems, we've had people who come to us who have gone to different agencies, apply, and then, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and it's going on, and they keep sending you back and forth, and then, okay, the person comes to you and you see the need. You've interviewed the person. You see it is not somebody who's trying to scheme or anything like that. They genuinely have a need. I had a case where the lady got injured on her job, and just to get disability, it took more than a year. So I think the thing is that I think people need to do their work and really, step up on the plate and be sympathetic and really, when the person comes to you, you interview them, you can know when the person is genuine, and you can, if the person have all the evidence to prove that this is what happened to them, or the medicals and whatever, why does it have to take so long?
Okay. Yes. That's Living Waters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to say, from a very different kind of angle, where in one of our ministries where we try to provide food packages, etc., we get letters coming from the ministry saying, can you help this person? We're an NGO hoping to get help from the government offices, and yet they're sending us letters asking us to help.
In what format exactly? When you say assistance?
Yes.
With regards to what, accommodation?
With any help that we can offer them. So we get these letters from the ministry saying that this person is in need, can you provide any services for them, whether it be foodstuffs or whether you can help them, etc., with accommodation, which we are looking for help from the government, and yet they're coming to us asking for help.
Okay, fair enough. And adult literacy, you have any point there?
So generally, everybody here has mentioned you go to access services and you apply. How is the process of application usually effected? In my experience, it usually involves a written form. So that's going to be the first stumbling block for 1 in 4 persons. And keep in mind that 1 in 4 is a national figure. And if you look at low-income groups, the low literacy is going to be much higher than that. So you need to look at what are the requirements to access services, and what does the person have to do to access it, and understand that if you are a non-reader, you do not want anybody to know you are a non-reader. So you are not going to say, listen, I come here to get these services, but I can't read. Fill out a form for me now. Give me some help. You're not going to say that. You're going to bluff and whatever, and then you're going to get vexed maybe and walk out and say that because you can't fill out the form. So as frontline persons there, is there an acknowledgement of this? And what are the steps for accessing services? And I can say that even as a literate person, the steps are usually pretty daunting, right? I do remember, something as basic as going to get my license renewed and asking a question and being told, read the sign. Now that is something that, I could do, but if you're not literate, what do you do then? You walk out. So there's a lot of this is a hidden issue, and a lot of people are unable to access services. Let me just talk about one other thing. When we started in adult literacy, we had a very good partnership with the Adult Education Unit. And what we would do is bring students up to a certain level, and then they would move on to school leaving or CXC. And we knew the process, and there was a process. And those classes started with the academic year, like all education does. And what we've had over 20 plus years is a deterioration in the services being offered. And they've moved, successive governments have moved the adult education services from ministry to ministry. We in the Adult Literacy Association are not even sure now who to call to get the list of classes. We kind of look and see when it's issued, which ministry it's under, and when it's starting. And sometimes they start the classes in April. Okay, so we used to have a system in place where students would get to a certain level of literacy and then they could move on through the government system. And even that now we are finding. So I would say one of the big factors that is a deterrent for people accessing services is that how you access these services, where they are housed, the process for them is changed often and without clear information being given to even agencies that are in the field like ALTA. We should be regularly informed as a partner, what are the next steps for our students to continue accessing their education? Why aren't we informed of this? Why do we have to go seeking this information and are really unable to find it?
Okay, I want to bring in the Senator Hazel Thompson at this point in time.
National Center for Persons with Disabilities. Now, you have been in existence for a number of years. It's an organization I'm very familiar with. Now, what I've observed, though, is that in terms of where you are, your access to people, you are based in San Fernando. And I'm a little concerned that over the years, the organization really has not come out from San Fernando and reached the rest of the community. You've been doing excellent work over the years. And somebody mentioned this morning, Ms. Laidlaw, about using the community centers. There are a number of areas in Trinidad with community centers, and I'm wondering why it is that you couldn't link up with some of those centers to provide the service, because all over Trinidad and Tobago, we have people who need that very, very important service that you've been offering. So when you have to answer the question about where you find people in terms of poverty and the numbers that you provide for places like Port of Spain, it's linked with the fact that you are in fact based in San Fernando, so you will have very few people coming to you from Port of Spain. So you cannot therefore answer what is the area with the largest poverty level, because you are not reaching those people at all. Do you have any plans, or have you given serious thought to moving out more from Lewis Street to reach those people?
Well, I mean, I thank you, you know, for acknowledging that we have done a lot of good work. And in terms of, it is a struggle to maintain the one center that we have, to provide the service that we have there at the center. It's a struggle financially. So while we have, you know, big dreams, because we want to do this as a passion for those of us who are there to provide this service on a national level, it continues to be a struggle to keep the one center going. And I take your point, I take your suggestion of, you know, working through the community centers. I think it's a valid point, and being able to reach more people that way. In terms of answering the question in the areas, really we would have answered for persons who would have come to us.
Exactly.
Yes, yes, I admit that. We can only provide the data for persons enrolled with us or who would have passed through the center at some point in time, and not on a national level. You know, we can, Alta said, you know, 1 in 4 persons might not be able to read. Estimates are, and it is just that, estimates are that 1 in 5 persons have some form of disability. But again, we don't have that data resident with us.
Yeah, because when you talk about 4 persons from San Juan, and you talk about 8, you know, about 15 from Port of Spain, as opposed to 43 from San Fernando, it means that San Fernando is doing pretty well.
Yeah, and it's based on location, I agree.
Yes.
Right, I agree. And we have to accept as well, disability is a, you know, is
nationwide.
Makes you, say that?
Yes, it's nationwide
Right,
as well.
and disability itself is a vulnerability, but it is not the only vulnerability for a lot of persons. You know, you have subsets, one of the other, and disability and poverty combined is a terrible, terrible combined vulnerability. Because, I mean, it prevents, like Alta was saying, you know, about all these forms in print. But print don't work depending on your disability. Radio don't work depending on your disability. And then combine that with poverty, where families can't come out to access the service. So the information not reaching them, and then transportation is prohibitive, mobility is, you know, not accessible, infrastructure of the government offices. So all of this in terms of reaching out. The community centers, I know, you know, some are quite accessible, some are not, and that's the reality of the thing. Yeah? So, you know, when you combine all these vulnerabilities, because I don't think any one of us sitting here really fall into one set, you combine, you know, you intersect into a whole lot of them. And I would speak for disability. We have single fathers who are persons with disabilities. We have persons with disabilities who are unable to read or write, persons with disabilities who live in poverty and extreme poverty. And somebody spoke about the means test. Is it just a means test for what we would say a regular person, in inverted commas? Because disability brings with itself expenses and takes you further into, might move you from poverty to extreme poverty. Or there might be a new level for persons with disabilities living with other challenges.
And you know, you also said that you've had no increase in funding from the Ministry of Social Development since 2005.
Yes.
I mean, what have you all been doing about that?
Writing, asking. And I mean, we are doing it the correct way, writing and you know, seeking support. We have not protested. We have not brought it, you know.
Are you too polite then?
But I'm wondering. Yeah, I'm wondering, right? But we have done it. We have done it the right, we're trying to do it the right way, you know, keeping the communication open. We have good support from the ministries we receive funding from. We do, yeah, but I take your point, maybe we're too polite. Maybe we need to.
I asked, you know.
I hear you. I'm visually impaired, but I hear you.
Okay.
Recognize Member Subers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing I have come to understand based upon what everyone here has been saying, definitely all these issues cross-border, they touch and concern so many different people. I was waiting or waiting to find out whether or not any of these groups have caravans that maybe would specifically go into some of these areas that they suspect may have individuals who are suffering from these issues, and try to educate them about the access to public grants, public funding, or even access to the systems that you all have within your organizations to assist them. Because I definitely do understand that being a member of these, being a vulnerable person, based upon whatever the disability or whatever the issue may be, illiteracy or whatever it may in fact be, could in itself be a weight that prevents the person from actually going out. It could be that they consider themselves a stigma, that they don't want to integrate well within society and come out and actually reach out to ALTA or reach out to the National Center for Persons with Disabilities, or reach out to the Single Fathers Association or Single Mothers Association. How do we and do you all empower these people to, one, reach out, one, speak to you, and then go out there with your assistance, or maybe even on their own now, to access what the government may very well have available to them?
Madam Chair, members, Serval has been doing that since 1993. Actually, we have a program called the Parent Outreach Program, which is a home visitation program, where we link these vulnerable groups with services out there. Yes, we admit ALTA has its place and everybody else here has its place, but we too took the opportunity to, someone may say, well, Miss, I don't have a birth certificate for my child, and they don't know how to access it. We go out there, we get the information, we bring it back to them. They may not be able to read the form, what they have to fill out. We assist them in doing that. And in addition to that, we may even accompany them to the area, the office that they have to go.
But you see, that's, in addition to that, I mean, you're all different factions here sitting today. Today could very well be the start, if it hasn't already happened, where you all also exchange information. So in a situation where you have an individual that you've already assisted to procure the necessary for the birth certificate, and you recognize that he or she can't read, now you have a contact with ALTA, and you could assist the, you know, this is something that it's exciting, you know.
If I may say, as I said before, in the central area, we have a very strong, I would say, multi-sector approach. So the NGOs come together with the state entities together with the TTPS, 90% of the time led by the TTPS. We have a lot of those caravans where you speak about. Serval is normally there, sometimes NCC, sometimes if you get ALTA, NCRHA, every service you can think about is at these centers. One thing I would say about the community centers, I'm glad you all brought it up, sometimes it's muscled. Right? It's muscled by whoever is in charge of the corporation, and if the corporation like you, if the councillor doesn't like you, or the councillor doesn't like the initiative, or if the councillor's name isn't said enough in the initiative. So you all should really look into that part of it. We experienced a lot of issues with that, I will tell you, in the central area, in the enterprise area, when we were dealing with issues related to gang war, Muslim Rasta City gang war. When these initiatives were put on there, we had a lot of challenges. There are a number of spaces throughout the central areas that are underused, underutilized. And when you ask for access, or when you write the borough, you get a long letter telling you no. So that is one of the main issues there as well. And I will also like to talk about that birth paper application. And I said, we even go the distance as late as up to yesterday, the TTPS, Single Fathers Association, we took a mother that we were helping. She has 9 children. We took her to the legal affairs where they assisted her now getting her birth papers. One of the children is 17, 9 children that have never gone to school. And hadn't we accompanied her to legal affairs, I'm telling you, she would have had a run around, because these children are, only yesterday they got named, I should say. The names were now inserted. Children from as young as 3 to 17. I don't know if there's a consideration here of family planning and these things, but that's the only link I think we're missing in the central area, where we could go into these families, because many of these families we go into, that's 9 children, the mother is 42, father is 58, there's 15 children, there's 10 children. So we see in a continuing cycle. And then when you ask the oldest daughter, she already have 2, and she's now 19 as well. So we go to the homes. We've gone to the homes, that multi-sector approach. As everyone would say, yeah, resources is a challenge. Sometimes I'll be honest, from our perspective, we do waste time sometimes to write, to get a rejection letter. What we've realized is that through partnership and through that multi-sector approach, I might have a facility, another person might have a facility, another person might have a facility. So we at least start getting something done, hoping that the government comes in after, the state comes in after. And I must commend everyone here from civil society, because we have been holding these trains for a while now. Sometimes when I hear the budget or parliament report of 25,000 receiving this and 24,000 receiving that, I wonder where the 25,000, where they are, because nobody on our ends that we've made applications for receiving so gainfully. So I would just say one approach that we use, because of that resource, that strap for resources, is that multi-sector approach, where we all come together with what little we have to try to make a big impact.
Madam Vice Chairman and members of civil society, I would like to add to what Mr. Fields is saying. We do not have a caravan as such. However, we receive a number of invitations from people throughout the country. For example, credit unions when they are having their family day. Some of the schools invite us to come and speak with the students and the teachers and staff and so on. And what I have done, what single fathers have done, we have collected material, literature, brochures from a number of the various NGOs and ministries as well. And whenever we go to speak at these invitations, we would take these materials and give it out so that people have the opportunity to be edified. With regards to the birth certificate office, there's an element that hardly anyone speaks of, and I would like to ask that that element be addressed. There is a degree of corruption that exists at the birth certificate office, especially the one in San Fernando. We have persons who line up there from dusk, very early in the morning, from dawn, sorry, very early in the morning, and the numbers are given out. So we have a situation where you can be the first individual to have reached the office, yet you can receive number 20, because the security guard collects numbers for persons that would have made contact with her.
I'd like to intervene there. I want to put a question to you all. Now, we are aware that government services are available. And the question I was put to you all, that as NGOs, you all are support mechanism in the whole organizational structure. And so you have recognized certain issues. What are you doing as NGOs to alleviate or to make a softer landing in these circumstances? And I believe we started off the question in that regard, because you all are part of the whole social service network. And based on that, I want to ask a question to the president of the Single Fathers Association, because you said that you work with the TTPS to assist your vulnerable groups with employment. I want to ask you, what are some of the organizations other than the TTPS with whom you partner with to seek employment for some of your members?
Well, I'd make mention of the HDC. I wouldn't say we partnered per se, but and it was even through the connection through the TTPS as well, because the TTPS did it with them. They would have asked particularly if we had any men available who were laborers, or men who were available for some projects they were about to start. So basically that has been the only other entity that has have some level of job availability. We've also connected with Jobs TT. They would sometimes ask us to send people to them. Some of the places where their job applications are need to be made, they tell us to send them, and then when we send the father said they say they have to pay them $500, and when they get the job. And so the only free service I'd say we've been able to support to really harness was from the HGC at that point in time. And as I say, any odd jobs anywhere, any businesses, I'm also the vice president of the Foreign User Association. So within my capacity, if any of my business partners need some workers somewhere, I try to fit them in there. I try to ask them and they'll take a father who may have some skill they need.
I wanted to generate this question based on the fact that you will act as NGOs to support the ministries and, coming to terms with the literacy stops persons from joining classes. What are some of the ways in which you as an organization, have aided persons in reducing this particular stigma against persons who would really need to access your programs?
So the first thing to recognize about the stigma with regard to low literacy is it comes from the literate, not from the low literate. The source of it is those of us who read, who look down on those of us who don't read. And it also comes from a misunderstanding of literacy and what it is. It is a skill, just like any other skill, but somehow is equated with intelligence, okay? So we certainly don't have time to explore this issue, but looking at what we've done, we've spent 27 years addressing this issue of stigma. And the most effective way, as I mentioned before, is to get persons who've benefited from our programs to speak about it. But one of the main things is we need to stop assuming that everyone reads, especially those who are lowly literate, who don't have those, low income. So perhaps if you start with the assumption that if a person is coming from poverty or extreme poverty, assume that their skills in literacy might not be what they should be, and therefore you need to make accommodations for them, right? So to make your systems so that they are not reliant on reading and writing to access them, and to be careful in the kind of language that you use. So really we're looking at awareness of the issue of literacy, being aware of it, and also making it okay for anybody to go and improve their literacy. And how do you do that? How do you make it okay? Your tone of voice is important. The reaction you have when you realize somebody is not a reader. And we've actually done a video on how do you respond. What is the kind of language that you use? And that was, Movietown played it for about a year for us. So we've tried in every means possible, face-to-face, interviews on TV, the videos that circulate on social media. We have been fighting this battle for 27 years to try and bring a bigger awareness to our nation of the issue of literacy. But it certainly doesn't help that we continue to put out literacy statistics of 97 and 98%, because it means that the person who is not literate thinks they are alone. They are the one person and like no other, and therefore they don't feel that they can go, that they're one of a very few. And it becomes very daunting then. But if you know there are others like you, and that's one of the things that once people enter into a class with us, one of the things they say to us all the time is, so many people in here, they thought it was just me. And part of it is that when they come to the class, there is a feeling of acceptance, and this is not your fault. This is just your brain is wired differently, or your circumstances was different, and therefore we need to now work with you to get you to where you want to be. Because the fact of the matter is, if you're not literate, all these services that you're talking about here, and birth certificate has been mentioned many times, and well, if you're not literate, how are you even starting that process? So what the NGOs are doing is really giving people access to the services that government has, but we should not have to do that. We should not have to negotiate government services for the population of this country. The government should be providing services that the public can access, and to provide those supports for persons who need to get their birth certificate or any other. And information should be provided in a way that is clear, and there should be clear processes for you to access services.
Last question. Has the adult literacy program commenced any efforts to collaborate or cooperate with any state agencies or any other non-governmental organization to achieve an education for all approach? We know the benefits and advantages of collaboration and cooperation.
Yes.
Did you ever engage in that type of an approach with a government agency or non-governmental agency?
So ALTA's been here for 27 years. During that period, I would have sought to register with a number of ministries to have ALTA registered. Apparently, we don't fit under any ministry, but we are registered with the Ministry of Community Development. I would have submitted many proposals over the years to successive governments. We would have also looked at skills training programs on which vast sums of money have been spent. And skills training programs usually require persons to be literate. So it would seem an obvious first premise that you need to have a literacy component in a skills training program. And we've done proposals on that to tertiary education institutions. I think that I could safely say that we have explored every available opportunity for collaboration with government over 27 years, but not really had much success.
When you look at your responses to the first responses to question 5, the challenges of vulnerable groups which interact with your organization who are living in poverty and extreme poverty in Trinidad and Tobago, your responses point to a different type of literacy, legal literacy.
Right.
And the statements that you make here are very worrying to me. You talk about the inability to pay maintenance, which leads to imprisonment for single fathers.
Right.
The inability to pay, I can't see it leading to imprisonment. Are you talking about defaulting on an order after the ability to pay has been determined? We don't answer yet. Also, you spoke about fathers not able to adequately provide for their children, which can result in their losing custody or access to their children.
Right.
Now, maintenance of children and custody or access to children are separate rights of the child. One cannot be predicated upon the other. And that is really something that should be known to all the magistrates and judges in this country. So it means that whoever is perhaps representing you, and I've told you before that you have legal aid clinic and you have legal aid and advisory authority where you can be assisted so that people would not, single fathers would not be in this position that you are saying that they are, because these things should not happen at all.
All right, I'll respond. I mean, legal aid is there, and it's very hard to acquire. There's a threshold that many people don't qualify for. That's one thing. And
the clinic as well at the law school.
All right. Additionally to that, when I say inability, and you would know as well, I know you are legally trained, you would know as well that many a times, many fathers who go to court without experience, and that's why I'm guessing you're hinting they should have legal representation. They would go and someone will make a suggestion. Can you pay $300 a week? And at the point in time, just to get out of the court, they say yes. And really and truly, they cannot. So we understand, and I mean, I do concur that some people need legal representation. But I'd also like to bring to your attention instances like these. I have a father I've been dealing with, Mr. Vidish Baila from Princestown. And in his scenario, he's paid maintenance religiously. He's now 60 years of age. And what would have happened to him? Now, mind you, he is 60 years of age, and his daughter is 24 years of age. And he's still paying maintenance for the said child, right? Still paying maintenance for the 24-year-old.
Disabled?
Huh? No. A very strong woman who goes to university. Based on the fact that she's doing tertiary level education, he was given the opportunity to continue paying. Fine, no problem. This is permissible by law. The thing is, up to last October, Mr. Byler suffered 2 strokes. A matter was brought by himself, by his attorney, to ask the magistrate to dismiss it based on the fact for the last 12 years, even 6B after adulthood, that he supported his daughter, and it was dismissed by the court. The magistrate, in turn, based on what the lawyer has said, and we have made an application for the soundbite in that courtroom, told him that he can pay the court.
May I? This matter is before the court.
No, it
so
isn't. It is no longer. It is completed.
Okay.
All right? But anyhow, I will forget, long and short of the story, he is still he still has the maintenance order against him after he suffered 2 strokes. And let me show you how this now has affected even his sisters, because I want to bring the social issue, how it affects even women in the circle when some men are affected. So for him to be able to pay the maintenance since him being rendered unable to work, his sisters tried to help him. One sister, and I'm going to show you how the system itself pushed people from poverty to extreme poverty. So the situation of that court order of him paying maintenance for a 24-year-old woman is on his back. If he doesn't pay, he is imprisoned, 1. So he now has his sisters helping him. One of his sisters who helps him pay the maintenance, so he isn't imprisoned, she is receiving something called widow's grant, right, which is only $1,300. She didn't know her name is Miss Samdai Rampasad, right? Yeah. They don't mind. I raising this for them because as we speak right now, she has to go to the social services department in South because she would have been receiving the widows.
Excuse me. Let us refrain from calling names and
Fine, no
let us be
problem.
brief with our examples.
No, but I understand. I just want to show how the system can push people from poverty to extreme poverty. And particularly for this lady, I'm very concerned because she was not made aware or she was not informed that she should not be receiving public assistance because she has a stroke and widow's grant at the same point in time. She has now received a letter from social services that she is in debt to them for $20,000. They cut the public assistance, so she now has the widow's grant only, which her husband paid for $1,300, and now has to find $20,000 plus to pay back the Ministry of Social Development.
Goes back to my original point, because an appeal could have been filed based on what you're saying, right?
Not for the
order,
money. Not
the
for
appeal,
right.
When he had his stroke or whatever, I told you before, the reduction of maintenance, all of those things are available. You need to liaise with the agencies that can help you. If you are an NGO, and this goes for everybody here, you first of all have to be aware of all the helping agencies. And that is, if you don't know, you cannot advise, you cannot assist, the people who come to you.
If I may say, Ms. Thompson, we are aware, but some blame must go to the magistrate that would see someone in that type of instance. And even if we don't want to say that, we could appeal and lose again.
No,
I'm trying to highlight the issue.
The only thing is, Mr. Field.
Members and officials, let us make our references through the chair.
Yes. Chair, yes. Chair, through your chair. I hear everything you say, Mr. Fields.
Right.
Especially when you're dealing with matters, because I'm an attorney as well.
Understood.
There is a balancing exercise that is conducted based upon the needs of the child with the ability to pay by both parties. And I have to agree with what Member Ahi is saying, that it is important, because sometimes I sit in court myself as well too, and I see instances just like what you would have articulated, where I could see on the face of the individual, be it male or female, they absolutely aren't aware what is going on in an effort possibly to have matters continue at a particular pace. But many a times judicial officers would ask attorneys in court to assist. at least in terms of giving advice on the spot to the individual so that they are not treated or at least perceived to be treated unfairly. And I think it is very important for all persons who, as I indicated before, to try to link with other people within, as you say, multi-sector approach or whatever. Ask a question so that you don't have a situation where everyone is ignorant of what could possibly occur or changes that could be made. So that we must be very careful in terms of statements we make, not passing blame or judgment on a system or individuals who work within the system.
I take your point, Mr. Sobers, but I don't know if you understood my point.
Um,
And I'm at the end of it.
Let us continue. Go ahead with your answer. Through the chair.
Sorry. Madam Chair, as I said, I understand the points and the sentiments of the members. This person that I just referred to was someone that had legal representation. I did say that. I don't know if it wasn't understood. No, I said that he had legal representation and he made an application, or possibly you didn't understand what I said. He made an application for the maintenance to be dropped. There was an attorney in his matter. So he had legal representation. But I mean, is there something that I wanted to put out there? It is very important. I hope you all understand the sentiment. I can't see a man with 2 strokes being made to pay maintenance for a 24-year-old woman. I can't see that being justifiable in any form or sense.
Okay, I now recognize Member Ford.
I would like to go to Ms. Howe, the Single Mothers Association. In your opening statement, you mentioned that you're looking at living quarters for women,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Something for the future, and you're looking at a 2-year stay, as the case may be, right? But your idea, has it been documented in terms of proposal? What headway have you, put on stream? Who are you talking to? As the case, could you just shed a little light on it, because it's something I think that's important.
Yes, sir. Well, about 8 years ago, I applied for a parcel of land, state lands, and it's being processed, and we are trusting that goodwill prevails with their decision. And that particular parcel of land is deemed for the head office of SMAT, where we will have a functioning office where members from all parts of the country could come and be officially registered with us. And also we want to have a counseling center there where we could have clothes items donated stored, food items stored, and that's just for the head office. Right? We want to have the head office set up there and where women can access the help that they need, because we don't have a functioning office at the present time. And the parcel of land that we are speaking about to house the mothers, we still have to go to the minister with that. But we would like to have a centralized parcel of land, preferably a couple acres where we
So
can.
I suggest that you will probably put forward a proposal, documentation,
Yes,
everything.
but we already have a parcel that we are waiting on for approval, and then we move on from there to the second part.
Madam Chair, just one other question. I know the time is tight, but I just need to probably clarify this for sure. I know Ms. Lucy Smith, right, from Alta, mentioned about, and some of the other things in terms of the government services, right? As we know, government is a continuum, right, from one to the next over a 5-year period. And I just need to be sure in terms of the services that are offered. I think it's clear, right, what services are offered, right, in terms of the various ministries. Right here, we're talking about the Social Development Ministry. Clearly what they offer is documented, right, because again, as a member of parliament, I'm the member of parliament for Tunapuna. I have brochures, I have flyers and so on that I send my staff to collect at the various offices of exactly what are offered. They give you a little synopsis in each booklet and each flyer, what they offer, what are the requirements, right? And then you go to the particular thing. So is it that probably the services that are offered, the human resource personnel, could it be that the problem lies from within the public service staff with regards to the problem that we are speaking about?
Certainly there are countless stories of service not being what it should be at various government offices. So I don't think, we need to talk about that at all. I think one of the issues that we find, if I look at it because I'm just looking at a very narrow perspective, I think the other members here could really look at a much broader perspective as to whether the whole range of services that are listed actually exist. Because this is what sometimes I have found. I mean, at some point, so every year we have a talk for all of our tutors, and some years ago, maybe as long ago as 10 years, because many of our students have a whole range of needs, I invited a member from then the Ministry of Social Services, whatever it was called. The names change all the time, right? And we did a 1.5-hour session on accessing the various services. And out of that, we had hoped we would be able to produce a document that says, okay, what are the main services that our students could access? After that 1.5 hours, it seemed pretty clear to all of us in the room there that while there were things that were written down on paper, that when you actually came to try and access these services, there were a whole range of daunting obstacles, and sometimes the services just weren't there, that they existed on paper, but they weren't there. And what has happened over time in Trinidad, in my view, is that because government services are rather opaque and difficult to access, you have given birth to a whole NGO sector, and this is why we sit here. We sit here in this NGO sector because there are services that are not being provided to our people, and we want to provide those services. And we've all selected different services, different areas to focus on. So mine would be education, because that's my field. And in that field, I certainly have constantly tried to link with the government bodies and to get a system going of partnership. And that has been very difficult, because certainly with regard to ALTA, we are seen as the competition, not the group that is cooperating with you. So I think there is a range of, there is a difference between what is there, what is listed, and what is the reality for people. And I think some of what has been stated here is that when we do try to access those services, even when we have literate persons, supporting, that these services are very difficult to access. And this is something that is not for us to address. This is not our responsibility here on this side of the room. This is the responsibility of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. So I find the tone of these questions to be very interesting, that somehow we are here trying to be held accountable for the work that we are doing, vastly underpaid, vastly under-resourced, and somehow, you're asking NCPD why they don't provide services in Port of Spain. I'm not sure that that is an appropriate question to ask NCPD, unless somebody is stepping forward and giving them a building and giving them the resources to do that, because they have a model that can certainly be replicated. And I would love for us to be able to refer more students to them. So I do think that we need to think about what are we doing here in this committee?
Part of the objective of this inquiry was to examine the effectiveness of policies, programs, and services available to mitigate against the impact of poverty and extreme poverty on vulnerable groups in Trinidad and Tobago. And I want to ask this question to the Salvation Army. In response to the question on whether the organization has collaborated with the implementation of the National Social Mitigation Plan of 2017 to 2022, the Salvation Army responded that it was not familiar with such. And if you look at it, your response to Salvation Army, page 2, question 7. I want to ask you, what is the reason for not being okura of relevant national policy which may have had a substantial effect on the decision made by the organization?
Okay, let me respond to that. I have just taken up the position of the Secretary for Social Services. One of the problems of the Salvation Army is that we don't have enough local people. So we always have ministers come in. When they come, they spend 3 years, and then they move on. I am a Trinidadian, yes, but I've been out of Trinidad. I just came back in 2017. So after doing this questionnaire, I actually went and I'm starting to read there. So in my position now, I am trying to look at what we don't have in place, what we need to have in place, and it will take some time to come up to scratch. But one of the things that we have like one person doing two and three jobs. So sometimes it is not possible to give full attention to any one thing. But it doesn't mean that we need to be ignorant. We need to be able to find what resources are available, how we put it together, how we access it, how we are able to assimilate that information to other people. It's not, yeah, you're not here, but now that you know that it exists, to be able, and I have actually downloaded the document and I have started to read it. I just want to piggyback on the accessing of services. We have a hostel for young working women, and sometimes people are recommended to the hostel from government agencies. I have a case right now of where one agency has been paying the rent for one person, and right now they're over 1 year behind in bringing it. I have gone, I've sat down, we have worked out, I've done all the invoices, I've done that, and 5 months. And then there's no recourse, there's no paying up. You see the situations and you would want to do more. But the fact is that you don't have the resources to do the lot more that you ever. But what you try to do is with what you have is to do the best that you can.
So great. And you indicated that you have traveled and you are looking at best practice. Because in jurisdictions such as New Zealand, the Salvation Army releases a report assessing areas like child poverty and housing for the purpose of invoking change on a national level. So has your organization contemplated to undertake such an assessment? And if no?
No, we have not. And
can you give me the reason
for
such inaction?
As I said, that I have just been in this position not even a year. So I am finding my way and trying. There are some things that you can do right away. There are some things that you have to sit down, put it on a timetable and work towards it. I am not saying that we should not or whatever. What I am saying is that it is going to take us a time to reach up to where we should be going, because I don't think that we have been looking at the whole poverty thing in that light. We have been, in the past, we have done, the person come and they need food and we give them food. They come and they need medication and we can afford to buy the medication and we have given it, and we have not really had a structured programs in some areas. So this is one of the things that we're working on, and not just say, okay, you come and you get a food parcel, but look at what else can we do? How else can we do it?
How do you intend to improve stakeholder collaborations with other ministries, agencies, or NGOs to provide assistance to vulnerable groups who live in poverty?
Madam Chair, if I may answer. Looking back at New Zealand, I'm very familiar with the policy being developed there because of a situation that occurred in New Zealand. And it was a local Salvation Army officer who had worked long enough in New Zealand, have seen some of the inequalities and have addressed the issue. At first, the situation was a little bit uncomfortable because the Salvation Army is not always on the forefront addressing social issues, but that particular officer, wanting to do something, did so. It cost him something, but at least the government had invited him on board to help implement policies that would address some of those social issues. I had the privilege of attending one session in London where he was the person advocating those things and educating us on those various issues, which we call social justice. Is to just, if we are to develop such a program here in Trinidad, we would need the full support of the government. Because in as much as resources, financial resources may be available elsewhere, sometimes the human resources are limited and skills have to be imported. And one of the issues that we face at times is the issue of having persons coming here to work from other part of the Caribbean. The process is a little bit long, and that create problem with our staff addressing those issues, because by the time you get there late to address those issues, you find you are always behind. And that's the reality with the Salvation Army worldwide, where skills have to be imported. So that is one of the things that a handicap that prevent us to really implement policies that will really address some of those social issues.
Don, since your return from New Zealand with that experience, have you done a report where you would have submitted and tried to have collaboration or some kind of discussion with the government agency responsible for this?
Interestingly enough, I'm not Trinidadian, so I just come here for 3 years again, and before you know it, I am out. So I think it's something we have to write down, and we could begin the work with Major Cumberbatch being now a local person, having that responsibility. I think that's the way to go. She can further discuss that with the relevant departments, and I'm sure we can get somewhere with this.
She seemed quite interested in doing that, and I know she would do that. So I will give way to Ms. Ahi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We sit here to provide assistance. The public out there do not have access to the documents that we have in front of us. When we ask questions and you respond, the public will understand what the problems are, and you may very well get a solution from some member of the listening public. I have a special interest in the National Center for Persons with Disabilities, and Dr. Dick will tell you that that is an organization to which I have personally contributed. It is not inappropriate for me to ask questions because we are trying to assist with solutions. I grew up in an era when community centers were properly well utilized, and it's in that scenario that I make this suggestion. But we have to ask the question first and have you articulate the problems that you have so that the community and the government is listening will be able to assist you, and also the people who are working with other NGOs and the corporate society that has a social responsibility. Now I come to Serval. I think one of the most important programs I have heard about today is your parenting outreach program. When you look at the number of things that you are doing, this is key because of the way our society is today. You are doing some very important work with parents. We need this parenting outreach program. When I look at your submission, I see between 2017 to 2018, 80% has been lost. From 2020 parents assisted in 2017, 516, number of children 2383, 595. I shudder to wonder, to think that this is an ongoing decline, what has happened in 2019. So if you could assist by telling us what is the problem that has so drastically, caused you so drastically reduce the number of school visits going to 21 from 57. I shudder to think, you know, what has been lost because of what has not happened. What is the reason? How can we assist?
Okay, through Madam Chair, what has happened since then is that within the organization, VSEP was offered, and we have a considerable decline in staff. And with considering that we are an NGO and finance as usual is the issue. So therein lies the problem. So take, for example, we would have almost 33 members of staff, and we are now at 13 in Trinidad.
That sounds like a crisis.
That is. However, the staff that is on the ground, they are working as best as they can in the areas that they can, and to keep the program going.
We know about burnout, and we don't want that.
Through the chair, and for people who don't know about the Parent Outreach Program, we actually walk the communities. We walk the communities, we meet the people, we talk with them, we work with them, and we do a lot of workshops with parents in our communities. We have even extended the Parent Outreach Program to our daycare and early childhood centers. So it's not just walking the community, we also meet the parents in the daycare, we also meet the parents in the early childhood centers. One of the things we've also included in our early childhood training program is that parent outreach component, where anybody coming in to do the early childhood training program has to do that community component in which they access the community, get to know the community gets to know the school, and in that way we advertise the school, we advertise the parent outreach program, and we advertise all that we have to offer. But as Ms. Laidlow said, because the number of staff have decreased, and with retrenchment and all these things coming at us in the downturn of the economy, and you're getting more and more people being marginalized and being classed as in poverty and extreme poverty and being placed in those types of situations, it becomes harder for us, for the numbers that we have now, to work with all these communities, and the communities are growing.
You know, Madam Chair, my heart goes out to this organization because, you know, the fact is, when you look over the last few weeks at what is happening in terms of television and in terms of how many organizations got money to sponsor so many fetes, we wonder if our society knows where it is going and what is important.
At this point, I'd like to invite closing comments from Ms. Shireen Bosch from the National Center for Persons with Disabilities, Ms. Rosemary Scott, Major Leandre, Ms. Susan Gopal, Ms. Paula Lucy Smith, Mr. Rudal Fields or Rundle, and Ms. Shermaine Howe. And if you have any comments, further recommendations, we invite you to forward it to the committee, and we will certainly be pleased to review it and to make it be part of our final presentation. So I now invite the first speaker to make your closing remarks.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you for this opportunity that we've had. I think it's been an interesting conversation. I think we still have a lot of challenges ahead of us as NGOs. As we've heard a lot here, the finances is a huge part of that. And we hope that our voices have been heard and that the government will continue to partner with us and maybe find ways to partner even more in supporting the work of the NGOs, because we need each other to really bring our society to what it needs to be. And I think we see a huge decline happening in our society in all areas, and without us really seeing each other as partners rather than competition, I think we can find the solutions that are necessary. Thank you.
But also we look forward to cooperation with government and perhaps focus on literacy in all areas of government services and provision, a sort of awakening of awareness that this is a factor to be considered. And that would certainly improve or make it easier for us to be able to improve the literacy of persons who need to do this and then access the services that they need to access. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. We at National Center for Persons with Disabilities certainly appreciate being included into this discussion and this opportunity. And we stand ready and willing with the ratification of the rights, thank you, of rights of persons with disabilities. We remain ready. We note that no real work has started towards implementation, and we remain ready, because certainly inclusion, the Constitution provides equal rights to every citizen of this esteemed country, and inclusion means that everyone, disability, no disability, learning challenges, that we have to be included. And it's our responsibility to ensure that each one, whatever part of Trinidad and Tobago, is included in our national development and national work. So we thank you, and we certainly will, forward our further recommendations going forward. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. On behalf of the Salvation Army, I would like to really say thanks, a big thanks for having invited us here today. And I believe the information shared is going to be very useful to all of us. The Salvation Army is very much involved in whatever is happening in society, although we are behind the scene, but we have our place. When it comes to disaster, the Salvation Army also has a task force. I'm hoping that we can collaborate with local government and that our relationship with the local authorities can further improve, so that when the need arises in various communities, then the Salvation Army will have the ability to respond very quickly without any long delay. Thank you very much. Not only at Christmas, throughout the year.
Okay, we at Serval would like to thank Madam Chair and members for the invitation to be here. We will continue our struggle, and we continue to fight the good fight and carry the dream of Father Jerry Pantin. We will continue to work in our communities. We are put at risk in the communities that we work with, and we continue to work with the people in the communities to bring change, attitudinal change, and to improve lives in those communities. In early childhood, I am the consultant, but my focus is early childhood, and we will continue to work with the preschools and the parents and children in those preschools and the daycare to bring that change, to help parents to empower themselves and to sustain their lives and their families' lives. The parent outreach program will continue, regardless of the fact that the numbers have dwindled. We will continue to work with those communities, and we will continue to work with the other programs that we have, the Junior Life and the ADP and the Skills program, to work with all those young people that we work with on a daily basis. Our main issue right now is funding. Once we have that, we'll have the staff to continue to work. But we thank everybody here. We support and we work with many of the agencies, as many as we can, as we go along, and we will plod along. Thank you very much.
We thank you, Madam Chair, members, and fellow attendees. One thing I would love for the government entity to do is please make things easier for the NGOs to be able to help the persons on the ground by the time frame, having the time frame not that long, not a year, 2 years to get something basic that we need to support persons on the ground. And we thank you again for having us.
Madam Vice Chair, I would like to end on the same vein that I started. I mean, I take my hats off to you guys for actually recognizing that fathers are vulnerable. It's been a challenge for us to demystify the concept, even to men themselves, that even they are vulnerable and need assistance. Meetings and sittings like this is important, that the information go out there, where even men realize that they are challenged and they need help as well. So once again, I salute the Parliament for having and inviting us here. Thank you very much.
I'll conclude by reminding ourselves that better understanding and communication certainly makes better persons, communities, and government and country as a whole. Today we certainly listened to you, and I want to assure you that the Parliament, through this program, the Joint Select Committee on Human Rights, Equality, and Diversity, we invited you because we were interested in getting evidence towards the inquiry into persons living in poverty in Trinidad and Tobago with specific focus on vulnerable groups. And today we were satisfied, and I again remind you that you are free to forward your information, comments, and additional issues which you feel that we should be aware of after the session is completed. I want to assure you that, today we focus on collaboration with government and local agencies to bring changes to persons living in poverty and to focus on the vulnerable groups. And we look at disabilities rights and persons inclusion based on our constitutional, through our constitutional rights. We also looked at cooperation and focusing on literacy with government agencies and other NGOs. And as we go forward, let us always remember that today we must collaborate to make things better. We must listen to each other to make things better. And we must make that effort, that extra effort to keep on trying and trying again to create better agencies and to service people in our country. So I want to thank each and every one of you today for attending this inquiry, and I seek God's blessings that He would guide you all to your places where you would be leaving here, this very beautiful chamber, and to go to your respective places today, and to wish you a pleasant day and as well a pleasant and enjoyable weekend. From the Parliament, we say thank you.